Hi, I'm Scott Parietti, and welcome to Tools for Being. This is the tool for self-acceptance. Your true nature, your soul nature, is to accept yourself exactly as you are. So do you? Can you honestly say that you accept yourself in this moment 100%? No ifs, ands, or big buts? If you don't feel that way, or you're not sure, or if it's difficult to even think about, then it's time to dig a little deeper and find out why. Now, the reason why I'm putting the emphasis on self-acceptance rather than self-love is because without self-acceptance, there can be no unconditional self-love. And once you master the foundation of self-acceptance, self-love naturally grows and expands. For most of us, childhood programming is the number one cause of not accepting ourselves. And just like most detrimental programming, it's usually running in the subconscious, outside our immediate awareness. As children, we get programmed early on through the approval or disapproval of our parents or guardians. And I'm talking here about reasonably stable parents. We're not going to get into abuse or neglect or things like that. So the programming that happens is very simple. When a child is good or successful at something, the child gets showered with approval, acceptance, and shiny happy faces. And when the child is not good or does not succeed, she or he is chastised, given disapproval, and maybe even punished. Now, in the early years, children are completely dependent on their parents for everything, not just basic necessities, but for an understanding of how the world works. But obviously you can't sit babies down and give them an intellectual explanation, so they learn emotionally from how the parents interact with them and with each other. To babies, toddlers, and small children, their observations become the reality of how the world works because this is the only world they know. As children, we believe what is happening as truth, and we define everything by our feelings because we don't have the intellectual capacity to do otherwise. So the emotional programming that ends up happening in a child's mind goes something like this. When I succeed at pleasing my parents or adults, I am loved, I am accepted, and approved of. When I fail at pleasing my parents or adults, I am not accepted, not loved, and not approved of. So even though this isn't what the parents are actually saying or meaning, this is the message they're sending in terms of how the child understands it and gets programmed by it. It's basically an unconscious backfiring of the parent's desire for the child to be happy and successful. Another instance of childhood programming is when parents invalidate a child's emotions. This happens when a child is told not to be angry or depressed or sad. Basically, it's when a parent sends the message to the child that they should feel something other than what they are feeling, that what they are feeling is not appropriate. Rather than teaching a child that it's okay to express negative emotions and teaching them healthy ways to do this, the parents either yell at the child or try to insist that the child cheer up or be happy. Either way, it creates programming that makes us believe we are not acceptable when we have negative emotions. And as we carry that belief into adulthood, our negative emotions can become the cause of significant distress and damaging behavior to ourselves. So the childhood programming gets deeply ingrained into the subconscious and carried into adulthood, and consequently, as adults, we get stuck in a subconscious pattern of only feeling worthy, accepted, and lovable to others when we are successful. So when we fail, the subconscious belief is that we are not worthy of acceptance and love, not from ourselves or from anyone else. When someone's not happy with our work, our performance, our efforts, etc., we go right back to that false childhood programming of believing we are not worthy or acceptable. In those instances, we are still using a faulty, infantile, emotion-based system to misinterpret the situation. So any acceptance and love we may have for ourselves becomes 100% conditional on our success and on whether or not we are pleasing to others. And conditional self-acceptance is not authentic. But that programming is so powerfully ingrained that it overshadows our soul nature and cripples our ability to accept and love ourselves unconditionally, to see ourselves as the divine beings that we are. For example, at the time I'm recording this, I'm a realtor in Los Angeles. Now, there are times when I may have a client who's not happy with me or a situation, and that will trigger my old programming. But since I'm now aware of it, I can do something about it. All I have to do is stop and remind myself that I accept myself no matter what anyone thinks of me, no matter if I make a mistake or don't succeed at something, and no matter if a client is simply not happy with me. Now, that doesn't mean I don't try to correct the mistake or do what I can to make the client happy. It just means I don't let my childhood programming cause me to lose my own self-acceptance in the process. Social outcast programming doesn't apply to everyone, but it can occur when a child has an attribute that is markedly different than everyone else around them. For example, I knew from a very young age that I was gay, but I grew up in rural America before the internet, and on the rare occasion that anything regarding homosexuality ever came up in my world, it was always the subject of derogatory, hateful, and sometimes even violent remarks. So of course, as a child, I bought into this small town attitude, and I believed there was something wrong with me. And this made for an extremely intense pattern of non-acceptance, which kept me hiding my sexuality until I was an adult living in New York City. And then years after I came out, I had a big realization that I still didn't accept myself, which was actually great because that meant that the programming had finally moved from my subconscious to my conscious mind, and that meant I now had the awareness to do something about it. The reason why it can be so difficult for the awareness of a faulty pattern like non-acceptance to make its way from the subconscious mind into the conscious mind is because it means that to correct it, you'll have to leave your comfort zone, unravel false beliefs, and face your demons. And the conscious mind is lazy when it comes to things like that, and the only demons it wants to face are the ones on Game of Thrones. So, once you have that moment of awareness, it's important to then shift your attention toward a solution, even if you don't know what that is, because you can't find a solution while you're focused on the problem and what caused it. But I'll give you a little hint. The solution to not accepting yourself is accepting yourself. Most of the time, we're not living in the present moment because the programmed mind is either in the past, thinking about how much better your life could have been if you'd made different choices, or it's in the future, thinking about how much better your life will be once you get in shape or make more money or live in a nicer house, whatever. But the only way to be in the present moment is to just let all that go. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't get in shape or make more money or have a nicer house. I'm saying that the present moment is where self-acceptance lives, because in the present moment, you're not going over the past or waiting for the future. So try it. Just sit quietly somewhere with no distractions, and for 10 minutes, be in the present moment. Keep pulling your mind out of the past, out of the future, and into the present moment over and over again, and feel the peace you can generate from doing that. The more often you do this as a sitting practice, the more it will eventually become programmed into your daily life. Remember that self-acceptance is a much more powerful place than non-acceptance to create what you want in life. Think about it. You wouldn't go up to a friend and say, "You're stupid and ugly. Can I borrow $5,000? That saying about catching more flies with honey rather than vinegar applies to how you treat yourself too. And although I'm not really sure what the purpose of catching flies is, the point remains. You'll get better results from using self-acceptance as the foundation for change than you will from non-acceptance. It's amazing how something as simple as an affirmation can make such a big difference. Practice looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, "I accept you exactly as you are in this present moment." Do that as often as possible. The goal here is to feel the truth of the words as you speak them until you fully believe them. In addition, you can write that on a sticky note and place it in strategic places around the house, in your car, wherever, so you're always seeing the words and the meaning is always sinking in. Notice without judgment when you are triggered into non-acceptance of yourself based on someone being displeased with you. Don't focus on the person being upset. Focus on why it causes you to not accept yourself. And then when these instances happen and you notice yourself going into non-acceptance mode, stop and remind yourself that you accept yourself no matter what. Also be aware that non-acceptance of self often manifests as lashing out, getting overly defensive, or feeling the need to criticize the person who's not happy with you. You may be familiar with the term projection, and that basically means that you are projecting how you feel about yourself onto someone else. Projection is your ego's way of hiding the truth about yourself from you by making it about someone else, which it never is. Just remember, non-acceptance of yourself is not based on truth and is not part of your true nature. It only comes from you believing something that wasn't or isn't true, and from you letting the outside world determine your self-worth instead of giving that job back to your soul where it belongs. I sincerely hope you find value in what I've shared here today. For more tools for being videos, please visit my YouTube channel, and please feel free to respond with any questions, comments, or feedback. Be well and keep it light.